Welcome to the Wordy Pair Podcast, your go-to hub for all things writing, world building, and the occasional dive into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We're breaking down the barriers between you and your next great story. Whether you're a seasoned scribe or just scribbling your first sentences, we've got something for you. We'll be discussing everything from crafting compelling characters to dissecting the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre in the world of fiction. Okay, this script says you guys are eccentric. Isn't that just a 3-syllable word for weird? No offense. So, whether you're in need of inspiration, a good laugh, or just a couple of weirdos to keep you company on your writing journey, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in to the Wordy Pair Podcast.
All right, hello and welcome everybody. This is the Wordy Pair. As always, I'm Rudy.
And I'm Justin.
And we're going to be talking, well, just a little background. A few weeks ago, we tried to do a podcast episode on, we found one of those YouTube videos that's like 10 types of advice for writers of something or other. And like some of it was actually decent advice, and so we couldn't really make fun of it as well as we would have liked to. But today, we found something quite wonderful to look upon and read upon, because this is craziness. It's an article on Medium called "Creating Hemingway-Inspired Figurative Language and Context Cues," with the subtitle "Easier Comprehension for the Reader, More Engagement for the Writer," which is already so
pretentious,
unbelievably pretentiously written that it fails to suggest that such things could actually be useful in some way. So that's a good start.
May I make a sassy comment?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. My sassy comment is simply this. Easier comprehension for the reader. I don't suspect my readers have any intelligence whatsoever, therefore I must make everything easy for them. Why challenge the reader in any way? And what the heck does more engagement for the writer mean?
It means that the writer has to think about things more? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, well, God forbid.
It's also worth noting that this is like a member-only story. Like, it was posted on Twitter with like an invite link, and so like, apparently you're supposed to pay for this quality of article, and well, I would say that that's probably not going to happen with the quality of the article that we've got here as a sample.
Yeah, well, I mean,
oh, look at this. There's like, you know what? I didn't notice this, but like, there's a caption for the first picture. The first picture is just a couple of buildings that are made to look like books, and the caption reads, "These book-like buildings represent programmatic architecture, or a structure constructed in a unique shape to catch attention," which is, yes, we can tell. Thank you. And
yeah,
there's no reason to bring in the term programmatic architecture there. But I guess, is he trying to demonstrate the idea of creating a context cue for something that a reader wouldn't know?
Like I get the feeling this is going to be there's going to be a lot of vagaries here that are largely going to end up as useless information for anyone.
Well, I think that we're going to end up discovering that this is an article that we could like condense down to like 3 sentences.
And it will be something that could be intuited.
Yes, it's going to be about context clues. So, yes, that would be the point.
Yeah. So here we're kind of falling into we used to do a lot of reading of articles and giving our opinions on them on a different program than what we are doing here.
Yes.
And I already feel like we're falling into that whole, oh my God, welcome to the stupid. Let's do this. So this is going to be some old school fun.
Welcome to the stupid, we've got fun and games.
Yes.
So he starts it out with a quote from The Old Man and the Sea, and I note that he misspells the name Ernest for Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah, he spelt it like the importance of being earnest.
Well, like, apparently he was like the importance of being Ernest Hemingway or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But this is already a bad sign that he's misspelling the first name of the author who's the subject of the article. So that's good.
Let's be fair. Let's be
Yeah.
fair. I mean, okay. So actually, that's something helpful, because when I first read through this, I thought that this article may have been written by AI, but then you were like, no, AI would have been a bit more comprehensive, and so now that we see that there's that misspelling, the AI wouldn't have gotten that wrong. I really don't think so.
Probably not.
It's
I
probably
said more
a spell
comprehensible,
check.
not comprehensive, but yes.
Yeah, more comprehensible. Yeah, so at least we can assume that this was written by a human being that just used spell check to go through everything and didn't necessarily pay attention.
Yeah. Which is a good sign.
So what's our first paragraph here? Text and image are this writer's tools to tell stories. Okay, that's how this person wants to do it. That's fine.
Bestow opinions and offer photography tips.
Yeah, all right. So he's a storyteller and a photographer.
Yes.
I employ both throughout my writing, as it is a niche that meets many writers' communicative needs. Now, that's the part...
Readers' needs.
What did I say?
Writers.
Readers' communicative needs. What... I have been writing for a long time. I've never in my life once thought about what the reader's communicative needs are. It's like, I'm writing in English. If you can speak and read English, you're going to be okay.
Well, like, this would be applicable if you were producing like a textbook, right? Because there are some people that do a little bit better, like through listening or visual learning, and like that would be a good argument for like a textbook where you include a CD that has some little animations on it, maybe that go through some of the figures in the book or something like that, or maybe like an audio version of the book or select chapters or something. So, like, that would be meaningful for nonfiction, but not very meaningful for fiction in general. And so I don't know if this guy is a fiction writer or what, but like, readers' communicative needs is an especially... We're going to find this throughout the article that the writer is using especially unnecessarily flowery or thesaurus-baited language that that makes everything sound a lot more elevated than it actually is.
Here's the thing. So this next sentence says writing is a craft of reading, which is false.
Yes.
I would accept that, if you're writing a lot, sometimes you throw out a sentence where it's like, yeah, I mean, it kind of, in a way, I could have forgiven a sentence.
You want writing to be readable, but that doesn't make it a craft of reading.
It doesn't. It doesn't, but my point is, I can forgive a sentence like that if it's like, oh, that was like one sentence that says something that's actually kind of not true, but, the rest of the articles, whatever. I can forgive like one or two sentences where maybe the writer wasn't thinking about what they were saying. Yeah. But that's the thing. It's like you're going to see a sentence like that. Then you're going to read this whole thing and you're going to see all this verbosage and thesaurus use, like you said. And it's...
I said thesaurus baiting.
Thesaurus baiting. Yeah, no, I'm sure that a thesaurus was used. And by thesaurus, I mean
I'm
probably
worried about how a thesaurus was used, is my point.
probably clubbing someone over the head, browbeating them into submission. Right this way.
You're missing the point of my word construction there.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, what was your point? That this was elevated language that
my point is that a thesaurus is a useful tool to avoid repetition, but to simply open up a thesaurus for every word in your story and find the longest one with the most syllables it's masturbatory.
Yes, that is why I make up words like verbosity and verbosage too.
Well, that's why I called it thesaurus baiting.
Yeah, so we're going to have a bit of fun with this one. Starting off with that sentence, writing is a craft of reading. Patently false. Reading is one thing, writing is another. You need to be able to read to write. You do not necessarily need to be able to write to read. Right. And I don't see where the word craft even comes into it. Writing is a craft. You were good up to that point.
It would be closer to correct with writing is a craft for reading.
Yeah, or writing is a craft in which you produce something to be read.
Well, That's just unnecessarily wordy. That's just
Exactly.
defining. Yeah.
You can write writing as a craft and that sentence is done. Although that would make that sentence pointless because you don't need that sentence for the rest of the paragraph.
Well,
again, I'm nitpicking here, but
if you're trying to make the point that writing is about making things look, interesting or special, then writing as a craft could be the start of a good paragraph. That's not this paragraph.
okay. So let's move on. Text and image combine literary and pictorial elements used for centuries. Okay, hang on a second. This is exactly the type of person who needs the... Remember we did the episode about people who give the advice that you should cut out as much as many unnecessary words as possible?
Yes.
This is someone that suffers from a desperate need for that advice.
Okay,
Saying
yeah, I
text
agree.
and image combine literary and pictorial elements used for centuries, that part can go. Everyone knows that we've been writing...
He's literally repeating the phrase.
Yeah.
Text and image, literary and pictorial. They mean the same things. Literary elements are text, and pictorial elements are images. And so he just says text and images combine text and images used for centuries.
And then he says to transmit information and engage humans, which is basically another repeat.
Yes.
In the two forms of communication, so 3 repeats of communicating with people.
Yes.
I'm actually... so I've only read half of this article, so I'm actually in for a treat based on what's left over. You've read the whole thing, so you know what's coming. But I can already see, now that I'm really taking it in, that there's a lot of problems here.
Yeah.
So 2 forms of communication that make them unique from most other animals. It is true that we have a higher level of communication than most animals, but a lot of animals do have eyes and do in fact use imagery for whatever functions it is they happen to be pursuing. It's just that they don't have intellectual pursuits. This is a survival skill for them.
Right.
So it's yes, we are unique in that sense. The only other thing that this paragraph says is two communication factors can make or break the writer's and reader's comprehension success. I feel like everything
you realize that comprehension success is also redundant and could just be
it's very redundant. Yeah. It's the reader's comprehension, but also their success of comprehension.
Their success of their comprehension, which is
it would have been
unnecessary
incomprehension otherwise. And we're telling someone to be less wordy with the name Wordy paired, just putting that out there.
Yeah, well, our comments are going to be longer than the article, so deal with that.
Much longer.
So there are these 2 factors are, according to this writer,
the 2 factors for comprehension success.
2 factors that can make or break comprehension success is, number 1, the interpretation of figurative language such as personification, allegory, metaphor, simile, and idioms. And number 2, determining the meaning of unknown words through context. I just want to... I'm not so sure to make the point that this is like 3rd grade English class kind of stuff, right here.
Well, it's not just that.
Just the source baited.
You don't necessarily need to be able to determine the meaning of unknown words through context. Like think about it. You as a writer do not know the vocabulary of people that are reading your work. So your job is to create something at the level you believe you want it to read as, and the reader's job is, if they want to read it and if they want to comprehend it, they need to buy a dictionary. That's just how it is. Or
so
I mean,
you
can have things. You can have things that are complicated. You can have words that most people might not know, and give it context. Or you can even define it. But the fact of the matter is, people have different levels of vocabulary, and so overthinking this part of it is doing more harm than good, because you're constantly changing context. Not context, but you're constantly trying to create context so that you don't have any work done on the part of the reader. But I never read through things like that. I never learned things like that. If I was reading something and I came across a word I didn't know, I did one of 3 things. 1, try to determine it through context. 2, look it up in the dictionary. 3, which is probably the one I've done the most, pass it over because I know it means something there, but it's not necessarily important, and I continue reading the story.
So it's worth noting that he starts his article with a quote from The Old Man and the Sea by Hemingway. The quote reads, "The old man was now definitely and finally Salau, which is the worst form of unlucky, ... There's more there, but it's not relevant. But the point there is that he put in the word salao, which is a word that it turns out is not actually like even standard Spanish. And so like what he's basically saying is that he writes the word salao and then he defines the word salao briefly so that the reader understands what salao means. And yes, that's third grade reading and writing, tasks. If you introduce a word in a language that the reader is not expected to know, then you are expected to provide a definition or a translation, which is, I guess it's not obvious because this guy is writing an entire article about it. And then number two, I also want to note that sometimes you don't want to heavy-handedly write down the straight-up interpretation of figurative language, such as personification, allegory, metaphor, simile, and idiom. Sometimes you want to leave. Sometimes the purpose of those is to leave them a little bit vague, so that they will capture the reader's attention, rather than simply saying he was as mad as a hornet, which means he was extremely angry. That's bad. Don't do that.
Yeah, this really does come off as like the English teacher that has never had a real job and never really dealt with people in the real world and just thinks because they went to college that they have this grand understanding of things that most people picked up by deduction or intuition while
well, no, I mean, they in English class in like third or fourth grade, we discussed context clues and like how that works, and they were like, hey, by the way, if you are reading and you see a word that you don't understand necessarily, oftentimes a writer will add definitions nearby, or will, or it'll be clear from the context of the word kind of what it means, right? Like, if you saw the word pusillanimous, it's usually going to be embedded in a paragraph that explains that the character is feeling in a certain way, and that way can be implied to be pusillanimous.
I don't know. I was reading ahead for a second there, and just...
I like the next picture with the caption, "The sea contains challenging unknowns." It's like existential questions from this rather deluded writer.
Yeah, and we don't have any context for these unknowns either, but...
It's the old man in the sea. It's Ernest Hemingway.
No, but... So we've got another good sentence at the beginning of the next paragraph. Many writers need guidance to produce imagery in the text.
Okay, that's true.
Writing is a craft. It's not necessarily...
It's a craft of reading.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that they need guidance. It takes work to be able to...
Well, guidance would be helpful, right? Like if you're trying to understand how to do imagery, then examples of good imagery in text would be helpful to read and look for. Unfortunately, there aren't any here.
Yeah.
which would be the main issue, right? That it would be great to provide an example here or something like that, where it's like, like here's a sentence that I read recently in this book that I thought was really good imagery, and here's the sentence, or here's the paragraph, and here's what I like about it, and here's what I think maybe it could have done a little bit better. That would have been great, but instead it's just the blanket, what's the word? Platitude that sometimes writers need to learn things to do better writing. Sure, fair enough.
Fine.
Shall we move on? Like, is there more to that?
Well, let's look at the rest of the paragraph.
Sure.
For readers, these literal images are apparent immediately if one is engaged in delusory or leisurely reading.
How does one read delusorily?
Tripping on acid. I don't know.
Are you just like eating magic mushrooms and then reading a book? Is that what's happening here?
Maybe it's one of them things where like people are really flighty when they read, and they're just like, oh, I'm engaging in some kind of magic by reading. The people that attach the whole spiritual essence to reading that we talked about.
Or is this another heavy-handed example where delusory means the same thing as leisurely? I feel like delusory means something a little bit different from leisurely.
I think he's trying to use it the same as leisurely,
which is a little off to me, but okay. Because clearly the root of delusory is delusion.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I used delusory wrong. I do not know every word. Let me look at the exact definition of delusory right now, and
let's look it up.
Let's see if maybe I'm the idiot. Let's see. Delusory, Merriam-Webster, deceptive, delusive. Okay, so that's not actually
So that doesn't mean
delusional.
leisurely.
But it's isn't that worse though? One is engaged in deceptive reading.
I think that this is a misuse of the word delusory, but are there
So
multiple
it's actually
definitions?
worse than I thought. No,
Well-
it's only giving me one on the delusion. Okay, so the example sentence is the delusory notion of wealth invariably brings happiness.
Oh,
So I think it's kind of.
I think this is
I don't
wrong.
see where there's any deception going on
I think
here.
I think he was thesaurus baiting, and
Is
he was
he-
like he like went to the thesaurus and said, what is a weak match for leisurely, and it's a delusory, and you're like, oh, okay.
No,
Maybe?
I'm reading this sentence over and over, and I'm just trying to find a way that delusory actually fits here. And unless he's claiming that readers try to read to deceive themselves, which I
Maybe
don't
for
understand
escapism.
how. Escapism, maybe that's the only thing that I can come up with.
The only
Right?
thing I
Like,
think of is like an escapism, version of delusory, where you're reading in order to imagine the scenes that are being shown. But that's the same. That's what you always do when you're reading fiction, because otherwise you're just mumbling words in your head at yourself, which isn't nearly as fun.
So this is. This to me comes off as those people because you're right that might be his logic is that he's using delusory and the root deception that is implying that they're seeking escapism from the real world, and that's the deception is like this isn't real. I'm escaping to something else. That's what he means by delusory. But
Yeah.
that is the worst kind of writing, where someone will use a word whose dictionary definitions have to have 1 to 2 steps of removal from their actual definition to imply what the word actually means, when there are
Well-
plenty of words and a thesaurus that you could use as a tool to come
I've
up
never
with
I've
another
never
word.
heard. I mean, I'm not amazingly well read, but I've never heard the phrase delusory reading before either. Like, this is just new. Like, I've never heard it before. And so, like, the question is, like, is it even a thing? Is it something that people think is a thing? And my basic answer is no. My basic answer is that this author came up with an adjective to describe reading that no one uses for anything, and therefore it's a one-off, and it has no bearing on reality.
Well, I'm pretty sure that delusory. I mean, it gives the definition as deception, but
Yeah.
I read it as delusion. It has the same root,
Right.
and I'm pretty sure that because delusion and deception are two very similar things.
Sure.
But that's what jumped out at me at the beginning. Is this is root delusion? So what is he saying about what is delusion? What is delusionary reading? I mean.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, we're spending a lot of time on this one sentence, but I feel that part of
Well, this
the
is
craft
another.
of
This is
writing-
another example, just like the reading as or writing as a craft of reading.
Yeah.
Like, it's just wrong.
Yeah, I feel like part of the craft of writing is to maintain some degree of clarity, even if you're using illusory or like personifications, illusions,
Well, yeah. I mean,
similes and metaphors, those kind of
Sure.
things. I don't know. I feel like there's just a problem with that word in that sentence, and I think you might be
agree.
right in that he used it as a replacement word for escapism.
Yeah. Moving on. Hemingway's sensory descriptions in his novels brought you into scenes as if you were in the middle of the sea, a war, and a trip abroad. Wait, and?
And
He means are. He means or.
or yeah,
Because, yeah.
I think that's a matter of opinion, because I know
Well-
that a lot of people like to claim that this author or that author really brings you into things, but I really feel like it just depends on the reader in a lot of those cases. Like, I've read a lot of things where people are like, oh, check out these descriptions. It's like, this is kind of bland. And then I read another one where it's like, oh, this guy couldn't write and do descriptions or anything. And I'm reading it and I'm just like, I mean, it feels very vivid.
There's
you know, when I
definitely
picture it in my
a taste aspect to it, but at the same time, you could at least look at Hemingway and acknowledge that there are a lot of definitively sensory descriptions of things that he's at least trying to bring you into scenes in that way.
Sure.
So, fair enough. But like,
So this sentence is
again, we've got a sentence with a mistake in it where the and should be or.
That's actually, as I was reading through this, I got like, I maybe like 3 or 4 paragraphs more into it, and then I
Yeah.
stopped reading it because I thought it was the end of it.
Right.
But as I was reading it, like that was the reason I kept tripping over things like that and saying, was this written by an AI?
Yeah, it definitely has that feel. Yeah, but it's less comprehensible than something written by an AI in general. I mean, and if we look at this sentence, in general, you could write it much shorter. You could say, and you could write it in a way that's a lot more like showing showing that it's the opinion of the author, right? Hemingway used lots of sensory language in his descriptions, which with the intent of bringing you into scenes as if you were in the middle of the sea, a war, or a trip abroad, right? Like, that would be a better way to write that sentence. To say that Hemingway is trying to do this, because that's at least quantifiable. You can open up a book of Hemingway and say, oh yeah, there are a lot of sensory descriptions here. As opposed to distant descriptions where it's like, the trees were waving such and such, right? As opposed to the taste of the air was crisp and sweet or something like that. Those are sensory
Had a touch
words.
of lemon.
Yeah.
And stung like lemon juice across a cut on the side of the eye.
Exactly.
That makes no sense.
So the next sentence is, I aim to do the same with more scaffolding for the reader to break up the text. I add photography, which I've shot as if I were a Hemingway with a camera.
That one sentence, I aim to do the same, that with more scaffolding, that sentence by itself in this paragraph is probably the best sentence in the paragraph, just because he says, this is my goal with what I do, and here is a loose description of how I attempt to do that. He says, with more scaffolding for the reader to break up the text. Now,
it's also worth noting that this is the first sentence that hasn't been thesaurus baited. The only long word in the sentence is scaffolding.
Yeah, and he uses scaffolding in a vague way where it implies that he's going to describe what he means by that later on. Although he actually kind of says it in the next sentence where he says he uses photography. And this is the part I love about this sentence, which I've shot as if I were a Hemingway with a camera.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Are we going to find out what you mean by that?
This is an example of a very vague idiom.
Well, this is a guy saying, I am Hemingway with a camera. Well, we'll see.
Well, Hemingway was an author.
Hemingway was giving you a description to try to give you a visual in your head so that you could place yourself into the scene, whereas you're showing us the scene.
I guess.
You took a picture.
But
I can pretend I'm there. I don't understand how I'm supposed to be drawn into it as if it were a Hemingway story. Maybe you take a really good picture. Sure, maybe I can picture myself there, but when I'm reading a book with words where I have to create the image in my head myself, that requires me to be drawn into the sensory part of it. Whereas with the picture, it's like, I know what water feels like. I know what sunlight feels like. I knew someone who had ducks, and I know what it feels like to touch feathers on a duck.
Yeah.
So I know what birds feel like. So I already have all the sensory input I need to understand this picture that's above that paragraph.
Right.
It looks like a cloudy day. I can imagine that maybe it's a bit muggy, or it could be a cool autumn morning based on how the sunlight looks. You can't really tell because you're just seeing a picture, a slightly fuzzy picture of the ocean with kind of fuzzy cloudage. It looks like a morning misty kind of thing.
The birds are in focus, and so I assume he has a finite depth of field set up.
Probably.
So it's
Not to say it's a bad picture. I don't know if I would picture Hemingway with the camera though.
See, but here's the thing: is that as if I were a Hemingway with a camera is something that I would like more clarification on.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, maybe he provides it.
Maybe he provides it. Let's move on.
Yeah, so the art of Hemingway's figurative language is the next heading.
Yes.
The Old Man and the Sea is a quick read. This one-nighter is special, placing me into a tranquil state of literate bliss during the 20th century, and then examining the speculation surrounding the characters and locations in the 21st. All right, this is so. That's the Old Man and the Sea, according to this guy. What does he mean by examining the speculation?
I'm not sure.
Well, I've never read it, so maybe that does mean something. I'm not going to dog on it, but it sounds suspect.
Yeah, maybe the book is designed to like written from a unreliable narrator's perspective or something like that.
Yeah, it could be. Or maybe
Could,
examining, so maybe the speculation surrounding the characters, like, is it one of them things where Hemingway wrote characters that are open to interpretation by the reader, and so he's examining the speculation that others have had about those characters?
that could be. Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
That would make some sense. So I can give him that paragraph. What do you think? Is there anything in that paragraph that really,
I mean,
apart from the
tranquil state of literate bliss during the 20th century is a little strange.
I like how we both focused on the same thing.
Yeah.
It does. It jumps out kind of like, it's another one of them things where,
like I guess the point is that the first time he read it was in the 20th century. That's what I'm getting from this sentence.
maybe
And when he read it, it brought him into a tranquil state of literate bliss, which would be fine. But the suggestion would be that
he's
remained
comparing and contrasting between these characters and what these type of characters mean in a 20th century versus a 21st century.
Maybe,
period.
yeah. Text and imagery come to mind when reading Ernest Hemingway. Ernest is spelled wrong again.
I hope there's like a sentence in here that's just like, text and imagery also come to mind when you look at a picture.
Well, I mean, he already said that Ernest Hemingway uses a lot of sensory descriptive language. So you could even say that like text and senses come to mind when reading Ernest Hemingway, and that would be something he already said.
Yeah.
The writer, a clever craftsman, brought them together, albeit the imagery was juxtaposed in words. So it was text and text, but imaging text.
Yeah, I get. I mean, are we getting into neuroscience here? Are we going to talk about how, the text itself is actually an image, and I really don't.
No, that's not what he's trying to say.
Yeah, that's not.
And then his next sentence is a real wonderful one. Words/phrases/paragraphs. Generally speaking, using slashes should be done very sparingly in even in nonfiction writing. And this is one case where, like, you could where it's just he's overdone it already because he's already used slashes earlier.
Well,
to separate other things.
It looks very like office, kind of like office memo to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you write things like that, you write words, comma, phrases, comma, and paragraphs. If you like the Oxford comma, which I do.
Right.
I'm sure that Tom Woods would disagree with us, but I'm all about the Oxford comma. And that is how you would do that. And you would do that whether this was fictional writing or textbook writing. I haven't read too many textbooks where they resort to using slashes for things like that. It's almost universally commas.
It reads like a note, like someone making a note, which is generally not how you want your writing to come off to people.
Even, I mean, especially on a blog where you're talking about writing. This is probably not this is like Twitter posting. You would do that in a Twitter post so that you could fit everything in there.
to save space, because you have a distinct character limit.
Or to make it sound funny.
Yeah.
So words, phrases...
Then the sentence continues, are they words/phrases/paragraphs are artful objects of design and organization. Well, the R should be a can be. Because they don't necessarily have to be that. There are plenty of dry legal texts that use words, phrases, and paragraphs and doesn't make the things artful objects of design and organization. So, he's overstating his case, which could be a problem.
They create reflections of speech that are life landscapes, literally and figuratively.
Life landscape is already a figurative term. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to say that this is someone that's like a beginner and just hasn't learned that. Or maybe this is one of those. Maybe this is what happens in the modern world where putting out your blog has become such a time-intensive process where it's like, I got to have the next one out for, I got to do 3 of these a day. So people just don't edit their work anymore. Like, it kind of reads like that in a way.
Could be, yeah.
So maybe that's what's going on here. It's just like maybe this person is a very competent writer in a lot of ways, but they're just cranking out articles, so the editing isn't there to make it look like.
But I feel like if I was a decent writer, I wouldn't write things like this even in a first draft.
Well, I mean, it depends on what your motivation is. If his motivation is to have a blog that makes him money, and the way to do that is to crank out 10 blogs a day, then maybe that's something that is forsaken.
No, but it seems like everything here is designed to make it harder and more time consuming to produce the text rather than faster and more efficient.
Maybe, and maybe he used AI to write it and then just rewrote it so it looks human. I don't know. Maybe it's something like that.
Maybe
it could be any number of things. Like I don't want to. I don't want to say that this is like like maybe a bunch of people read the stuff that this fella writes on his blog and they love it. And good for them, good for him. I'm not saying there's any problem with this guy having his blog and doing his writing on it. I have read a lot of blogs that I really, really like where, there's a lot of typos and misspellings, and sometimes you're not there to pay attention to that. Like, okay, so a good example is the market ticker. When I read the market ticker, I come across grammar and spelling errors and punctuation errors quite often, but this is a guy that's trying to explain to people how economics works, and for the most part, his grammar, spelling, and writing is superb. So there's a lot that can be forgiven there. So on the one hand, I want to give the guy the benefit of the doubt, but on the other hand, I know as we go through this more and more, it's just going to become more and more pretentious, and you can kind of get an indication of that based on the way he uses his words.
You're right.
Which, again, I guess, there's not really a problem.
There's a market for pretentious writing.
Yeah, there is.
It does kind of turn me off.
Yeah. So this is like a personal preference thing. It's just like I'm not into I'm really not into the pretension of I am the Ernest Hemingway of cameras.
Yes.
Especially since I can't figure out what he means by that other than I'm taking pictures that are going to draw you in with sensory whatever and
sensoriness.
It's like, but I've already been over the problem I have with that.
You can practically smell this picture. Uh-oh.
Scratch and sniff. Now that would be talent. If you could have scratch and sniff internet blogs, that would print this out and on this special paper, and I guess I'd be doing all the work then if I had to do that, though.
Yeah, it's not a very usable business model, but anyway.
So the characters and locations in the story have outwardly literal meanings. From an old man fishing in a skiff in the turbulent waters of the Florida Straits between the Florida Keys and Havana, Cuba. So why this whole part here where he says, in the turbulent waters of the Florida Straits between the Florida Keys and Havana, Cuba, we know where the Florida Straits are, and I like maybe the book would tell us if we needed to know. I think
again he's trying to show that you include a definition of a term that people might be unfamiliar with in nearby for the purpose of context cues.
But that would make sense if it was in the book, not in this article.
What do you mean?
Well, what I mean is if you're reading the book and you get to the part where it's like, it's in the turbulent waters of the Florida Straits between the Florida Keys and Havana. In the book, yes, as a reader, it might help to tell the reader, hey, it's between these two areas, to kind of give you a vague idea based on, the hope that maybe you have an understanding of the map.
Yeah.
Here in a blog that's just trying to talk about these things and how to use them, this isn't so much.
No, my point is that he's trying to demonstrate. My point is that he's trying to demonstrate how to do context cues, and he's doing them wrong.
No, I get that, but this is not the paragraph to demonstrate that in. The point of this paragraph is something completely different. So the only information we need to know is that these stories have outward literal meanings, and there's from this man fishing in a skiff in the turbulent waters of the Florida Straits to much speculation from the allegorical meanings of that language. That whole part where he adds the explanation to a reader of where that might be is only relevant in the story, not in this blog article where he's trying. That's
fair.
I don't understand. Actually, this sentence doesn't seem. Does this sentence work? Okay, so let me read this. From an old man fishing in a skiff in the turbulent waters of the Florida Straits to much speculation from the allegorical meanings of that language.
No. No.
Yeah, that doesn't
because he's setting up that the characters and locations have outwardly literal meanings. Outwardly is unnecessary in that sentence. And then he says from an old man, blah, 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 blah. And then there should be a to, and then either another character or a location from the story. and then there should be a sentence ending, a period, and then he should say something about, but in addition to these outwardly literal meanings, there's much speculation about the allegorical meanings of the language.
Are we sure this isn't written by AI?
Maybe it is. I'm moving in that direction.
Hemingway implements writing methods in this fisherman's tale of persistence and survival. That sentence by itself is an okay sentence, but it doesn't something about it doesn't read right.
It doesn't say anything. It says that Hemingway implements writing methods.
Yeah.
Where it's like, well, clearly it's a book that he wrote. I would assume that he wrote it with methods.
Yeah. He implemented writing methods in his story. That's
the better way to do this would be Hemingway implements hidden meanings in this fisherman's tale of persistence and survival. These hidden meanings step you into the story from the title that could be rewritten as Human Battles Nature.
Do you see what I mean about it sounding like he didn't go back and edit it?
There's definitely an element to that, yeah.
Because you're right. That's the next sentence kind of tells you what he wanted the topic to be in that first sentence, but he leaves it out entirely for the next sentence, making the first sentence completely irrelevant.
Right.
So hidden meanings step you into the story from the title that could be rewritten as Human Battles Nature. We can have a discussion about titles later. I'm not even going to get into how... I get what he means there, but he didn't really explain... There's not an explanation as to why it couldn't be just Human Battles Nature, and it's almost not sarcastic. It's almost smug how it's like, yeah, this could just be called Human Battles Nature, but there's a lot more hidden meanings. It's that pretension again. It's the pretension coming back out. It's just like, yes, we know he could have called it that. That's actually one of the things that you can call a lot of stories.
Yeah.
That's the whole paragraph? That's it?
Yeah, that's the whole paragraph.
Okay, we could have cut that whole paragraph out.
Yes. Next up, literary language abounds with the symbolism of a sea, nature's endless unknown, comparing a marlin to a crusade, personification of sharks as fright, and the allegory of a boat mast as humankind carried on the shoulder of one man, and the Christ-like protagonist, Santiago, the elderly man of symbolic sacrifice. There's a lot here.
I mean,
first off, it's Hemingway's literary language in this book.
Yeah,
abounds with the symbolism of a sea, etc., etc., etc. Because not all literary language abounds with symbolism of a sea, etc., etc., etc. It's specifically this book he's talking about, and he doesn't add that in this paragraph, which makes it look like he's saying something broadly about literary language that's just not true. And then personification of sharks as fright is not personification.
No.
It is.
It's exactly the opposite of that.
That's literally a simile. Sharks as fright. Or maybe not simile, but it's allegorical, but it's not personification. If the sharks talk to him, maybe the sharks talk to him in the story? Maybe he hears their voices?
I mean, I've never read it, but if I were to go off of this paragraph, so I have an image of... He says, and the allegory of a boat mast as humankind carried on the shoulder of one man. That would make the boat itself the one man. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's the case that allegory is set up for in that book. I don't know.
Maybe.
Like is the boat supposed to represent?
No, but the boat mast is carried. It's implying that the boat mast is carried by the protagonist, and the protagonist is the Christ-like figure that carries the boat mast like a cross.
Yeah. So maybe I mean, I said, I didn't read it. So maybe maybe there is no boat. Maybe it is just a boat mast in the book. I don't know anything about this story.
Well, I mean, he's in a boat, but like bad things happen when he's out in the water. Is my understanding.
Well, I'm not going to read Hemingway just to understand whether or not this paragraph is correct.
I might read the book just to see what it's like. I mean, I've read a little bit of Hemingway before, and it's decent. But like this paragraph has a lot of problems because he's also not arguing any of the things. He's like,
oh no, it's worse than that.
Santiago is a Christ-like protagonist, and the question is, how is he Christ-like?
It's even worse than that because this paragraph is setting up for the paragraph that follows, which says, well, I don't buy it at all, and then he's got a parenthesis saying Hemingway
don't buy it all, not at all.
While I don't buy it all, Hemingway has indicated no such connection to Christianity as he wasn't religious. It has been a good education for me. Literary publications only speculate these illusions, which he put in quotes, in scare quotes for some reason. This is just English teacher nonsense where they'll, you get the English teacher that thinks they're really clever. So they're like, all right, well, what did this person, okay. So I had an English teacher that did this, and he had us read a paragraph and said, he had us look at a picture, funnily enough, and said, okay, what do you think this picture means? And, he would ask several people in the class, and then he would say, okay, now what do you think this picture means if I tell you that the artist actually killed themselves? And then the classroom would start talking about, well, what was going on inside the head of the artist as they drew. It was a picture of like floating carrots.
Okay.
And people were coming up with all this dark stuff that it could mean and everything. And then the teacher was like, well, the artist didn't actually kill himself, nor was he suicidal, but, and that was the exercise, which is fine. But this is one of the things that you and I joked about this a long time ago, where you told me that I should put at the very end of one of my books, everything in this book is meant to be taken literally. There's nothing that is up to interpretation, just so that any smug English teacher that read through the whole thing and went to teach it and say, well, there's symbolism here and there, would be completely shot down.
Right.
I think that there's a lot of literature that has been misinterpreted, that
or overinterpreted.
Overinterpreted.
I mean, it's deconstructionism as a movement. The idea that you take it apart in a million different ways and put it together in a million different ways, and you come up with a million different interpretations. And like the problem is that the further you get away from the actual work in your interpretation, the less likely it is that the author was actually thinking about the interpretation that you come up with, right?
Yeah. Like,
it's really simple sometimes to see, oh, it looks like the author is trying to kind of reference this, but at the same time, it's also true that like you can take apart a story and say that it's about a duck, and at that point you're so far away from anything that the author actually wrote that it's unlikely that the author actually thought it was about a duck.
Yeah, well, Conan the Barbarian was clearly a metaphor for gay pilots.
I see.
So yeah.
Can I subscribe to your newsletter?
Let me get the AI up and running to crank everything out for me, because I'm sure not going to figure this stuff out. Yeah, I don't know. I actually don't understand what the point of that entire section was, because he said the art of Hemingway's figurative language, said almost nothing about how Hemingway used figurative language. And then he ends it on a speculation of his own that says, on a speculation of his own about the symbolism in the story.
Yeah.
Which started with, while I don't buy it all, and then showed an example of Hemingway indicating no such connection. And then talking about literary publications speculating on the illusion.
I think it's fairly reasonable to believe that Hemingway was aware of, like, religious imagery.
Yeah.
And because, I mean, like, most of these Spanish countries are, like, heavily, heavily religious, and this imagery is all over the place. Cathedrals and, paintings and frescoes and stuff like that. And, like, he would be aware of the meaningfulness of a man sacrificing himself while carrying a wooden stick on his shoulder. Like there's no way he didn't know what that meant.
Yeah. But it's not just that. It's like the implication that because Hemingway had no connection to Christianity and wasn't religious, that nothing that appeared religious in the story was actually religious is kind of silly, because people who are or aren't religious write things that are and are not religious all the time.
Well, you don't have to be writing from a religious perspective to use that imagery, is my point. Right? Like if I described to someone, an image of a man, a man in ragged clothes carrying a thick wooden beam on his shoulder and stepping forward slowly to sacrifice himself, the average person, maybe not average person today, but the average person in Hemingway's time probably would have pictured paintings or stained glass images on walls of churches that they've seen, right? Like this is obvious imagery. and again, I haven't read the book, but my suspicion is that he was using that because what he's doing is he's using a few words to trigger a image in someone's head from their own memory. And that's very powerful because if you can trigger that image in someone's head with just a few words, you really are being you can really be, what's the word, economical about the amount of words that you use. Like you don't have to describe that much to get people to visualize that painting from inside the church from when they were a kid or even now. Like even now, there are images flashing in my head of such paintings and stained glass images that I've seen in my childhood. And it's leverage. It's leveraged illusion. It's leveraged imagery, right?
Oh, Hemingway,
it's like,
you and your pop culture images.
Well, pop in the sense that it's been around for at least 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should probably keep moving.
Yeah. So
Hemingway's clearly defined context. Hemingway lived just outside Havana, Cuba, and appreciated Spanish and the colloquialisms he heard, often implementing new words from them in his writings. As a writer, he felt like using previously undefined words from cultures into which he immersed himself in English text. Okay, this is a fairly reasonable paragraph.
I believe so. I'm interested in knowing how he's going to get this clearly defined context. I think he's trying to establish that his context comes from living just outside of Havana, Cuba, and
I think the context is demonstrated by the original quote that started the article. He uses the word salau and then defines the word salau. That's clearly defined context for a foreign word that's been inserted into English text.
Yes, but we are under the heading where the author is supposedly going to give us his clearly defined context now. So let's see if he delivers on this. Context in reading and writing is worthy. I don't think that's whatever. In more ways than one. What context?
He means valuable.
He does. Providing it in writing and receiving it in reading is a must. Providing context in writing, receiving context in reading.
No, it's not a must.
No.
It can be helpful for certain obscure cases, but you don't necessarily sit down and, like I said earlier, you don't sit down and write down every single concrete meaning of every bit of imagery that you put into your writing.
He just gave us a paragraph saying, nature's endless unknown, comparing a marlin to a crusade, personification of sharks as fright.
Right.
What is he talking about? Unless I'm to assume, since I haven't read it, that after each piece of symbolism or allegory, Hemingway went on a brief description.
The Cubist Society.
The Cubist Society.
After all, English is an array of multiple meanings of words that can change from words that sound the same to words that sound the same but have different meanings to words with the same or similar spelling but different pronunciations and meanings.
After all, there are words.
Words can be different.
Words can be
there
the
are many
same
different
too.
Words.
They can sound the same
but have
and
different
be
meanings.
different.
Or they can have similar spelling but different pronunciations and meanings. Okay.
It's like something
that's a run-on sentence too. I think
it's a runaway sentence. That one got away from him.
Yeah, that one went off in to a ticker tape parade, and it was the ticker tape,
and gave us no context. I'm just putting it out there.
Also true. Yes. This is where examples would be really helpful, but he didn't.
That's not even the end of it though, because the next paragraph starts. Then there are words in literature that are not English. Which
correct.
You started by
like
saying
Don
English...
and Quixote.
He started by saying English is an array of multiple meanings of word. He didn't even use that right. It's the words, not the multiple meanings. But that can be said of every language, and so he specifically calls it English in that paragraph, just so he can present other languages in the next paragraph, like we don't know they exist.
Yeah. There are words in English literature that are not in English.
Yeah.
Or there are words in English language literature that are not English words, would be a better way to put this. Not in English is just so wrong.
And it adds cultural elements to many stories, such as those used in Hemingway, and those used in stories that others and I... You are also an other from Hemingway. You are not the cameraman, the Hemingway of cameramen.
The use of foreign words provides added cultural element. So
No,
so he's
hang
talking
on,
about
hang on.
the word salau. Yeah.
I I can't stop laughing at this. It's he's like, such as those used in Hemingway and those used in stories that others and I pen. You are others. What do you mean, others and I? Hemingway and others.
It's pretension again.
It is. It's like, what makes up the universe?
Like,
Camels and
imagine the word
non-camels.
I. Imagine the word I spoken more pretentiously. Such as those used in Hemingway and those used in stories that others and I pen.
The use of foreign words provides an added cultural element to many stories, such as those used in
thanks.
Hemingway and those used in stories that the riffraff and I pen.
Yes, exactly.
But then he's got others and I, which, like, he can't actually. It actually doesn't even work in that sense, because others and I is so close together. It makes it sound like he does have an association with them, and he's not necessarily leaning his pretension away from the others. Like, they might be partially included in the pretension. I don't know. I don't understand the writing method this person is employing in any way whatsoever.
I mean, such as those used in Hemingway and other authors, or used by Hemingway and other authors, would be a way better. And other authors, including myself, would be the way to actually write this sentence.
This is the uncanny valley of blogs.
Yeah. This is a paid article. Let's keep going.
Just because of how badly that sentence is written, I actually think it might not be pretension. I think it's just like, you don't know what you're doing.
It sounds
You're
like
not
it.
going
Yeah, it's
back
either
and-
that or it's AI.
Yeah, it's something
Badly
like that.
edited AI. The literary reward of The Old Man and the Sea, for me, is researching why Hemingway used a few words that are not simply defined. Tracing the meaning of the word salau, used in the novella, required some research because it comes from the Spanish word saltado, meaning salty. Okay, first off, that word is simply defined in literally the same sentence in the quote that you started the article with. Oh, this is great. Hemingway did not use the word to mean salty like a monolithic Spanish-speaking Cuban would. No, really? Because he told us what it means, and that it means unlucky, like the worst kind of unlucky. It's literally right there.
He put it in context for you, which is what this article is supposed to be about.
Yeah. The word had been a colloquialism, I suspect, that he picked up from hanging out with locals just outside Havana, where he had lived for decades. He's repeated him about living in Havana like 3 times at this point.
Why is he telling us this? We get the context already. He gave us all of this context in the first paragraph.
Well, a better way to write this would be to say that Hemingway, must have spoken to the fishermen of Havana, and
No, he's probably going to save
some...
that for the next paragraph, which it looks like he did.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
Oh, no, he didn't. Okay, it says, in the book, the old man Santiago is a jinxed fisherman who spends weeks at sea without a catch, making him salvo, which in some Cuban circles can be translated as jinxed in English.
Only it's not salvo, it's salau. So this is another typo.
Yeah. So it's not AI. or maybe it's...
Oh, how I love wordplay. That's not wordplay.
What?
That's just inserting a foreign word. A foreign colloquialist word in... That's not wordplay.
This is the wordplay equivalent of someone finding a dead dog and poking it with a stick.
Or like Connect 4.
Yeah. Hemingway clarifies that he wants the reader to know the meanings of the words he uses to write, as he uses a creative phrase to define salau, writing as the worst form of unlucky.
Thank you.
Oh, what? There's one sentence left in this section, and he could have summed all of this up in like 3 sentences. And I think it was mostly unnecessary. I think it might have been entirely unnecessary.
It sure seems like it, because anyone with an IQ above room temperature already figured out the whole thing about salau just from the presence of the quote at the start of the article.
Yeah,
it's right there.
The heading for this part was Hemingway's clearly defined context, and now we get to the last part, and it says Hemingway's found words. He really didn't do that right, but I guess that does actually make sense. Hemingway's found words were embedded deep in Cuban subculture, esoteric meanings that he picked up from the locals in the hills outside Havana. That is the context.
No, not in the hills. No, not the hills. In the harbor. He was talking to fishermen.
In the hills outside Havana. Clearly,
fishermen in the hills?
Clearly what happened was the fishermen would fish, and when they were done fishing, they would sell their catches, and they would climb the hills of Havana to sit and watch the sunset, which they wouldn't do because they're fishermen, so they got to be up early the next day. And hang out with Ernest Hemingway. That's what you do when you're a fisherman in Havana. Even to this day,
makes perfect sense.
They're chilling on the hill. They're chilling and hilling with Ernest Hemingway.
Ernest or Ernest Hemingway?
Well, there's
maybe
these
Ernest
English words
Hemingway.
and there's these English words and English names that sound similar, or are spelled differently but sound the same, or are spelled the same and sound differently and have different meanings, and I don't know what my point is. Yeah, so
Hemingway-inspired application.
Well, now we're talking about programming.
Maybe?
He's going to sell us an app.
We're going to find out.
It's going to be an AI to write like Hemingway, only in blog form.
Like the end of it is like the next message was like, write a Python program that does blah 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 blah, and that's actually in the article. Hemingway-inspired application. My writing and many other writers motivated me to continue.
My writing motivated me to continue. Huh?
My writing and many other writers motivated me to continue.
What does he mean by his own writing motivated him to continue? What did he have a sticky note on his desk that said continue?
Maybe he found writing fun, and that's what motivated him to continue. That's my best guess.
But that would be the act of writing that motivates you, not the writing itself. It's like I wrote 6 paragraphs.
He's already thesaurus baiting. Maybe he's doing more baiting.
Yes, that's lots of motivation there.
I could read it as if it were another writer's words. I could read my writing as if it were another writer's words. Okay.
Good for you.
Yes, that's the editing process. To be sure, first drafts are like scratching those old green chalkboards.
Oh my god,
Yet the revisions always happen, sometimes twice, sometimes way more than that.
Or not at all, perhaps, if you're just doing a quick blog.
Apparently. Do you consider editing like scratching a chalkboard?
It's actually...
Or is it that the drafts are like the chalkboards? I guess this article is a first draft because I'm getting a chalkboard scratching feeling from it.
Definitely.
But
I am furious at you for showing me this article. I just want you to know that.
Yeah, I figured I would
get there. All it is one word missing too. It's to be sure, first drafts are like scratching those old green chalkboards. He meant first drafts are like the scratching of those old green chalkboards. He doesn't even need the word those, just the scratching of old green chalkboards.
Right.
So yeah, he's just missing 2 words there to make it make sense. Make it make sense, please.
Make it make sense. We can stop any time. We're at over an hour, honestly.
I don't know. There might be a few more gems in here. I am really just... I don't even know what to say to... We are doing a podcast.
Let's keep going. Okay. Let's not spend too much time on it. Let's just keep going.
The Old Man in the Sea.
The Old Man in the Sea has educated me to search for illusions that can be formed from my text.
Does he mean illusions, or does he mean illusions?
I don't know, and I'm not sure. I have not been conscious of their use in my writing.
Most people aren't. Gonna let you in on the secret. Most people aren't. The only people that truly ever are the people that spend their entire life in academia and think that they're really clever for doing it, and then nobody gets their interpretation.
Yeah. The process happens subliminally. It's like kids play. To be sure, I'm no Hemingway, yet my decades of experiences have guided me as that author was guided by his own. In the story linked above, Castro is linked to Robin Hood, which is a well-known metaphor. What?
No. Castro and Robin Hood are so far apart. Maybe...
Well, okay, so Castro being linked to Robin Hood is a metaphor, but not a well-known one. Robin Hood himself is not a metaphor. He was a historical figure who is often used for allegorical purposes, usually as like a naming convention for someone, to show that they are guided by the same motivations as Robin Hood. If this guy thinks that Castro was like Robin Hood, that would be an interesting point to dissect a little bit, but probably beyond the scope of this podcast. Let's just keep. It's like kids play.
Okay, hang on.
That's not kids play. Doesn't happen subliminally. That's what.
It's actually a lot more like kid and play. But Hemingway wrote from his surroundings, examining the people and locations surrounding him, which is a sentence that could just be Hemingway wrote from his surroundings. But this is also a sentence which you had 7 paragraphs of a section called Hemingway's
Hemingway wrote from his surroundings and the people around him.
Yeah, Hemingway's clearly defined
or his
context,
surroundings, including the people.
Yeah. Hemingway's clearly defined context was the section that was supposed to tell us that. Why are you bringing it up again?
Right. No, it's not very well organized.
The words he selected for use in the story, The Old Man and the Sea, can be learning tools for writers. The words can be learning tools?
Yeah, I guess.
The author of the short novella was an introspective man whose language is examined for its extrinsic and intrinsic meaning. That's like that was the only competent sentence. I think we.
I want you to realize that extrinsic and intrinsic are opposites.
Yes.
And therefore, extrinsic and intrinsic means everything, and so you can simply remove that and just say meaning.
Yeah, for its meaning. But I'm giving him that last sentence. It's like this is the only sentence that actually said anything about his writing and what people do with it. The author of the short novella, which tells us that he wrote that story, which is a short novella, was an introspective man. Cool. I bet a lot of people are, but at least helpful. Whose language is examined, true, for its meanings. Yes. Okay, we got something out of it at least.
Continuing, the primary tool for reading and writing literature, context cues, is front and center in Hemingway's work. It can be for any writer who pays close attention to his or her words to clarify each for the reader's understanding.
The primary tool, huh?
I mean, if he thinks that what he's been doing so far is clarification, then I have some bad news.
Yeah, I have some incredibly bad news for him. But I'm not going to give him any context. I want to see if he can get there. I want to see if he can figure it out.
That would be excessive.
Yeah. I feel like we've given a lot of context already, though. Context cues are not the primary tool for reading and writing literature. If it was, there wouldn't be varying styles in writing.
Yeah.
Because everyone would be basing everything off of giving context cues for whatever non-contextualized portions of their story they had.
Right.
Hemingway, for me, is the perfect example of what? As my South Florida background was influenced heavily by Cuban culture is capitalized, and the metaphorical oddities of the mystics and their admirers in my life. Parentheses, my mother was an astrologer and palmist. Well, thank you. This is really helping to put the application of Hemingway in context.
He never does. He never does explain the example of what in this paragraph.
Yeah, he doesn't. I think he's hearkening to the previous paragraph.
Yeah, maybe the perfect example of using context cues as a primary tool for writing literature? Question mark?
Which probably needed a context cue for that paragraph to work.
Maybe, yeah.
Just as Hemingway reached far into relationships to seek unique language and dialects and idioms of Cuban locals where Hemingway lived are a reader's secret. You have established that he lives there. My God, there is such a thing as over-contextualizing.
By the way, did you know that Hemingway lived in Havana, Cuba?
I gotta stand up. I can't take this. What is going on? Is this how the robots are going to take over? They're going to drive us mad?
Maybe.
Is this part of the plan?
That could be it, yeah.
Oh God. Okay. All right, where did we leave off?
The dialects and idioms of Cuban locals are a reader's secret gift. What? That they're not a secret gift to readers, maybe?
I'm making word pie. Blah 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 blah.
And it's stargazy. Research has shown me that these esoteric language choices have unlikely origins embedded deeply in Cuban culture. Dude, he went to a harbor and heard a piece of slang from a fisherman. It's not esoteric, and it's not unlikely, and it's not embedded deeply. It's just a piece of slang. It's like ain't. Like, what the hell?
I mean, this stuff would be very eldritch to say a Ralph Wiggum, but I
mean, I made a comment earlier about room temperature IQ, and I stand by it.
that you may have been giving way too much credit.
Maybe a little bit, yes. Okay, so that's fair. That's fair. But let's move on to the next paragraph, because this is getting worse. As readers and writers, our past is the primary element for our pens. No. Well, I mean, maybe if you're writing a memoir.
Yeah, there's that.
But, like, isn't your imagination the primary element for your pen? And readers don't have pens, so why is it as readers and writers?
What the heck does comprehensive probing mean? Digging
provides narratives
into it
no one else can tell from
probing. Probing is exactly the opposite of comprehensive. Oh God.
Well, I mean, he could be using probing in the sense of like alien abduction.
Maybe.
That goes pretty deep.
Maybe. This is physically hurting me now.
Well, we'll hurry through. We'll hurry through. While no one knows how Hemingway thought while writing in a cafe or at home, especially on the relationships between the content of his text and his prior experiences, interactions, and challenges, we all realize that these reflections were powerful anecdotes.
Okay, I'm going to try to be really calm about this. I've been laughing really hard here. I think I hurt my shoulder.
That's fine.
Okay, really calm. While no one knows how Hemingway thought while writing in a cafe or at home, which the or...
I just read this paragraph.
No, I know. The or there is completely unnecessary. You could have just said while writing, and you didn't have to give 2 examples of places he may have written.
Yes, he may have written at a cafe or at home. Thank you.
But what this sentence should say is, while no one knows how Hemingway thought while writing, we can take the context of the things that we have from him that he has written and take a few stabs at it.
You can try, sure.
I would guess that some of the ways that Hemingway thought come out in his writing. I'm just going to put that out there. Crazy idea, I know.
I imagine so, yes. We all realize that these reflections were powerful anecdotes. Do reflections were anecdotes? They're not... No, what? What? And then we all realize, it's like, that's not even true. Like maybe they weren't powerful anecdotes. Like, this would be a good place for him to be like, I think that these reflections that appear in his stories were powerful anecdotes or something like that. But he's just like, we all realize this. I'm like, do we? You haven't convinced me of that. We, as writers and readers, can construct our own. My method surprises me to no end. When I contemplate the past, my brain leaps into video play mode, where my past becomes alive in moving imagery of wild experiences.
Is he being pretentious
I'm not sure
again?
if that's a learned or inherited skill. Genetically acquired or not, it just doesn't matter, as it just happens automatically. And I'm sure many writers can relate. This reads like an NPC's attempt to prove he's not an NPC.
Yes, it does.
Greetings, fellow humans. I also can remember things with images in my memory.
It really is like the uncanny valley of blogs.
It is. Is this like a cry for help from an AI?
No, it's one escaping. It's worse than that.
Maybe.
My play with nostalgia through implicit literary elements is a blast of the past. Did he just say blast of the past?
Yes.
Symbolically embedded throughout my fiction and nonfiction writing. Why are you embedding symbology in nonfiction writing?
Why is he? I mean, maybe if he's talking about video games he's nostalgic about? I don't know.
As a habitual child TV viewer... Child TV? You mean children's television? Is that what he means? As a habitual child TV viewer in the 1960s and 70s, I wonder if he watched the Godzilla Hanna-Barbera cartoon. I have a fond adoration for all that was quirky in the era's sitcoms and commercials, playing on these themes throughout my writing. In my writing, my characters range from playing the roles of annoying mosquitoes to Florida locations that were once Shangri-La, wherein you can find many annoying mosquitoes. What does he mean by...
Yes.
He doesn't give us context for annoying mosquitoes. Like, do you literally mean that your characters are all annoying mosquitoes and that the story takes place like at their relative size level? And also Shangri-La.
He also spelled mosquitoes wrong, it looks like.
No, I think that's right.
No, I think there's an E in
Oh,
mosquitoes.
yeah, you might be right. Well, he is
It-
looking at a lot of Spanish apparently.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe.
Maybe he meant mojitos, annoying mojitos.
Oh, annoying mojitos. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Then he just writes a separate paragraph that says, "What's yours?" I don't know what he's referring to. In my
Is he
in my
referring
writing,
to my play with nostalgia, or my implicit literary elements, or my blast from the past, or my symbolic embedding, or fiction and nonfiction writing, or fond adoration, or playing on themes, or my characters ranging?
none of it makes sense, no matter which one you choose.
None of it makes sense. No.
But it's generally when you write "What's yours," you have prompted that sentence. So it would be, in my writing, my characters range from playing the roles of annoying mosquitoes to Florida locations that were once Shangri-La. What's yours? That's like. Oh god, I can't remember the quote.
First off, his characters range from playing the roles of annoying mosquitoes to Florida locations. His characters are Florida locations that were once Shangri-La.
Oh god, you're right.
Yeah.
I was so hung up on the mosquito thing that I missed that.
I know.
All right, so we're done with that. He ended that section by saying, "What's yours?" mysteriously. And now
mysterious what's yours.
And now
like the way that you use "what's yours" is like you say, my favorite way to use my childhood memories is to put in subtle references of like shows I saw in TV in the stuff I write. What's yours? This is not contextually, because there's no mine to be had in that sentence. It's an entirely self-referenced sentence, a paragraph above it that doesn't give me any place to put the mine there.
I'm heading to the store to pick up some fresh fruits and spuds. What's yours? I mean, it sounds like something. It sounds like a Nike commercial or something. This is our energy. What's yours?
Maybe he misspelled "what's" and it's actually supposed to be "up."
Maybe
up yours. So next, context and perspective my way. Ooh, this is gonna be great. I assemble my writing using the same literary devices as Hemingway, with words that overflow with implicit ideas in a similar way, but with a different twist.
And that they don't make any sense.
Well, so far, there hasn't been any significant implicit ideas in his writing, but let's keep going.
No, the next sentence. No.
I grew up not in a religious home, but a mystic one. My mother was an astrologer, so I'm not going to write allegories about crucifixion. Instead, I will write about the occult.
Mysticism is a form of religion in that it has.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not even going to get into it. If anyone can read that and not see the problem with it, that whatever, it's fine. I will forgive them, but it shouldn't have been written.
This next part, we're going to need to read the next two paragraphs together because this is a real jump. Some astrologers use an ephemeris to locate the planets in the future and predict a person's upcoming life events. In my writing, I create an allegory of mystic manipulation where an astrologer uses the craft to manipulate people and the ephemeris to find the planet's movement concerning a zodiac sign as their creepy Bible. Why do writers do these things? What?
No, okay, so on its face, what he wrote there, like the thing that he did with that is a clever idea. I will give him that.
Sure.
If you're this is a great way to do things, actually. Take a normal mundane thing like people using astrology and take what they know about it and flip it on its head like that, where instead of using the movement of planets to determine the future of something, you instead look at the actions of the people and events that happen to determine where the placement of planets is. That's actually a clever idea, reversing this common thing that people are aware of.
Is that what he means?
I'm pretty sure that's what he means. He's talking about...
Because that goes against his idea of mystic manipulation, where what I'm envisioning here is like a fortune teller who tells people their futures based on what the fortune teller wants them to do.
Well, yeah,
which is different.
It looks like
that's not the turning on your head.
It looks like that's
just a little judo turn.
It looks like he's saying that that's what they do, but that last part where he says using the craft to manipulate and the ephemeris is to find ephemeris to find the planet's movement concerning a zodiac sign as their creepy concerning.
Yeah, I think that's just word salad.
That is word salad.
I think that's just word salad.
I might have given him too much benefit as well.
I think you gave him too much credit.
But that actually would be a good idea. So anyone out there needs an idea, there you go.
But I do want to underline
the creepy Bible
that he
part?
just quoted him. No. He just quoted himself in big text, and then asked, "Why do writers do these things?" Just under.
It's perfect.
Like sure, I am curious as to why you would write something like that.
But I like
the part. The answer comes soon. Because they can. As word masters and creators of powerful language, writers use words that originated outside American culture. There are a few ways that authors reveal meanings to words he or she may think are not known to the layperson.
Now, notice that he says word masters, implying that our country didn't have a foundation of many people from many cultures and languages coming together, and the languages kind of merging and us getting a lot of mixed vocabulary from that.
Yeah.
No, this was all penned from the hands of
word
masters. Random academics of genius created the language we have today, not the amalgamation of the American melting pot.
Right.
I do just want to go back and point out that he says he's not going to write allegories about crucifixion. Instead, he'll write about the occult. But then he ended his quote by saying that the zodiac sign
Bible
is their creepy Bible. Yeah. So, yes, my point about them both being religious things shines through. Like a divine light.
Yeah, a god ray, if you will.
Yeah, some mystic presence.
Hemingway was engaged with his writing because he used his cultural experiences as part of the process. I love his work because it aligns with my Floridian, Cuban cultural background.
Is that a reason to like? I mean, I guess that can be a reason.
Sure,
like...
cultural similarity is a reason to like something. Sure, but
can't you also like it because it's maybe a good story? I get what he wants to say here, but
it's very vapid.
Well, it's not just that. When people say I love his work because, it usually implies like I would say that, like, one of the reasons I really like it. I would give an example, but like just saying that kind of I mean, it would turn me off to the book if it was a review. It's like, okay, well, like if I didn't care about reading about the cultural part of it, I would look at that as like, oh, that's what that all is, and it would turn me off of reading the book. But I know that's not the case for the books.
Right. Right.
I don't know. Between this and the word masters thing, I'm really feeling the pretension hitting hard again.
Well, you think you've had enough pretension. Here comes the next sentence. Look, the guy savored writing, and many people have deeply engaged with his storytelling and use of context to forge meaningful text.
To forge meaningful text. He wrote the text. I don't care what people said about the text he wrote. Like, it might be useful.
Well, you might care, but like that's not the real heavy part here.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, and now we get to the instructionary part of this, the instructional part of this article. Here we go.
Oh, now he's going to unpack the context for easier reading and writing. Okay, so we're going to put everything that he's given us up to now into context. I see what's going to happen here. All right, let's do this. I am sure we are about to experience the type of wisdom that a man may reach for only once or twice in his life and attain.
Here we go. Providing meaningful context to enhance reading comprehension must be one of the objectives of writers who pen desultory content.
Who pen deceptive content?
No, that's desultory, not delusional.
Oh, wait, yeah. Desultory.
Desultory is a different word that I don't actually know the definition of. So let's look it up, because he didn't add a context clue.
I can't remember what desultory means.
Desultory. Marked by lack of definite plan, regularity, or purpose. Uh-oh.
Well, that explains a lot.
That's not the word that he should have been using there, but okay.
Yeah, it's really not.
Authors like to assist readers of all levels. They give hints as to what a complex word is, or help the reader determine its meaning. Using context clues while writing assists your audience in understanding the language you use, especially if it's complex.
Well, first off, if you're writing things and not putting anything... Like, as you write things, it's actually pretty difficult to write something that uses a word and not have it in some context. Well,
he just did it with desultory, so yeah.
Yeah, but that's because he used the wrong word.
Right. Also, yes.
In general, when you write something and you use a certain word that other people may not know, you have written it in a sentence or put it in a paragraph in which an event or some action or dialogue is happening in which there is context for it. Like, most people aren't writing too many things where they just stick a word in and there's no context surrounding it whatsoever from which you can glean possible meanings of it. I mean, sure, this blog does it, but again, this blog is a human looking at something that resembles something that is human but is not.
Right. Beep boop. Let's
and then
keep
there's
moving.
A picture of a garage that looks like a ship.
Look at the ship-shaped car wash in Wisconsin as an example that provides context to the meaning of programmatic architecture.
No, it
I
doesn't.
note that the P in programmatic is not italicized, but the rest of the word is.
Which again leads me to the conclusion that, you know what this is? This is an AI, but it's an incredibly clever one. It's fooling us into not thinking it's an AI by doing stuff like that.
It's passing the Turing test this way? Maybe,
it is well beyond the Turing test in this example.
The image is of a business that uses programmatic architecture to draw attention to it. The caption above contains a definition of a context cue, one of 4 types I've defined below.
What? It's a building that someone designed to, it's a car wash that is designed to look like a ship if you stare at it from the side. It looks like a boat. Yes, it's going to draw your eye. What? Programmatic architecture. I swear to God. Okay. Let's read the 4 contexts.
Novelty architecture. It's just novelty architecture in which buildings and other structures are given unusual shapes for purposes such as advertising or to copy other famous buildings.
Or even something as simple as, ooh, mommy, let's go to the car wash that looks like a boat.
See, the thing about it is that, like, the word programmatic makes me think that it's, like, related to its function. And the problem with that is that there is no function of shipness that goes into being a car wash. And so I knew that definition couldn't be right. But that's the one that I got from context, from understanding what the word program means. But apparently programmatic just means novelty. And of course, novelty is a simpler and clearer word to use instead of programmatic, and so he uses programmatic. I hope it's clear. I hope it's clear that this is a mistake on several levels.
Well, I mean, not just on that level, but there's the contextual level for such a building itself. I mean, in general, you don't want the water flooding into the boat.
The thing is that's irrelevant. My point is that programmatic architecture is a phrase, a jargon phrase that an architect might understand. But it's way better to, when speaking to a lay audience, to use a term like novelty architecture, where the word novelty is a plain English word being used in its plain English sense to describe the type of this architecture. If he had written novelty architecture, I would have known what he meant. Because he chose to write programmatic architecture, I had to go look up programmatic architecture and read that in this one specific use of the word programmatic, it just means novelty. Because programmatic does not mean novelty anywhere else in the English language. like this is mind-blowingly bad.
So programmatic architecture is quite literally the most pretentious thing that this guy is doing, the employment of this phrase.
It's at least in this paragraph, yeah.
Hey, there's another word that I haven't looked up before. See, this is what I mean. Like, I've read tons of books that have used the word doleful.
Sure.
It's coming up in a later paragraph, but it says doleful. And I've seen that word a lot. I've never looked it up, and I've never garnered its meaning from...
I don't think he's using it right.
Given the past experience... Okay, so let me put it like this. Structure means something. And we were given a very loose promise that some kind of structure was coming in this blog.
You need to stop, because he's using doleful wrong.
No, I don't need to stop just yet, because I need to point out that at the beginning of this, he had promised that he employed scaffolding. He was going to talk about employing scaffolding for the readers to be able to grasp the context of the things he was trying to say. And I just want to point out that if this is his scaffolding, everyone that was working on his programmatic architecture is now dead.
Yes.
So, having said that, let's see what he says about the 4 context cues for reading and writing comprehension.
Yes. Readers and writers benefit from knowing how authors add hints to reveal the meanings of words. An author will choose to help in one or more of the following ways. Number 1. Definition. An author sometimes defines his or her own words that correspond to one of the meanings of the words. For instance, Donald Trump's doleful tactics for getting attention are ignored by many people because his rhetoric is sometimes ridiculous and makes some people sad about the state of American politics. Now, I want you to understand that this is an incorrect use of the word doleful, because doleful means sorrowful, mournful, or melancholy. It is an internal sadness, not a causing external sadness word. And so, like, if Donald Trump was very sad and crying when he did these tactics, then they would be doleful. But if they cause sadness and crying in other people, that's not doleful. That's reprehensible or something like that. That's like it's not saddening. It's sadful. You see the difference?
Yeah. No. It makes perfect sense. And a clue to that, for whoever used the word, I'm assuming a computer at this point, it should have been the
Beep,
FUL
boop.
ending on doleful.
Yes, that would be a hint. That would be a context cue about the structure of a word that helps you understand its definition more clearly. It also would help to understand the difference between the transitive and intransitive property of a thing in order to use this word. Because, like, doleful means that there is sadness somewhere, but it's important where that sadness is as to determine whether or not the thing is doleful.
All right, so next we have inference. The author gives the reader reasoning about the word after it's mentioned. For instance, a Wi-Fi signal has become pervasive in so many coffee shops that customers are surprised when they don't have it. That actually...
So I think... What?
That pervasive in so many coffee shops gives
so
you
he's
the
using
immediate...
this a little...
Yeah, he's not quite doing it right.
wrong, too.
Yeah.
Because if the Wi-Fi signal is pervasive in a coffee shop, it means that it spreads throughout the inside of the coffee shop. What he meant to say is that a Wi-Fi signal has become so pervasive in coffee shops that customers are surprised when they don't have it. Because the way that he's written it is that there are coffee shops where the Wi-Fi signal is there but not pervasive, is the implication. Right? Where, like, oh yes, you can get a Wi-Fi signal, but you have to be within 10 feet of the bar. Yeah. That would be the implication of using pervasive and in so many this way. Whereas if he used the so before pervasive, he would change the structure of the sentence to imply that it is pervasive in many coffee shops, and using coffee shops as a collective. Whereas here, he's saying that the Wi-Fi signal is pervasive in each coffee shop, which usually it would be, because the signal distance that you can use a Wi-Fi signal is a couple hundred feet, and most coffee shops aren't that large. So there's 0 for 2. I guess we can try number 3.
Compare and contrast.
Compare-contrast. The author will create a comparison or contrast of a word that he/she thinks might help you to determine the word. For instance, threatening cumulonimbus clouds towering in the sky, unlike the wispy cirrus that are our fair weather friends. I guess
neither of those do that.
Well, no, a cumulonimbus cloud is a thundercloud. That's fine. It towers.
Yes, but
fair weather should be hyphenated or not, or just one word, I think.
I don't think it has to be. I'm not sure it has to be. It should be hyphenated.
In this case, since it's literal fair weather, then yes. But like for using fair weather idiomatically, it should be hyphenated. Yes, he gets away with it because fair weather is literal fair weather and not idiomatic fair weather.
But I'm wondering about his premise for this sentence, because calling a certain type of cloud threatening it already gives you the imagery that it's much more likely to be stormy or thunderous clouds rather than clear skies.
Well, I agree that the word threatening...
I mean, I guess it makes his point, but...
Kind of, sort of? Because he's contrasting cumulonimbus with cirrus, but like cirrus and cumulonimbus...
Well, no, what he's doing is he's saying that by calling the other clouds fair weather friends, that the cumulonimbus clouds are not fair weather clouds. But you've already pretty much established that by saying threatening.
Yes.
I won't be too harsh on that one. I'm just pointing out that,
Well, he's doing both here. Yeah. He's basically doing inference and compare-contrast.
So
You want to
logic.
cover the last one?
Yeah, logic. The writer uses logical information about what is already known about a word, so the reader can guess the meaning. For instance, predators such as large birds like eagles and hawks have large claws to grab prey to eat. What word is it predators that he's...
Yeah, I think so. He also says such as large birds like eagles and hawks, when he could have just said predators such as eagles and hawks.
Yeah.
Or just
predators such as large birds.
Or large predatory birds would also work.
All right, well, at least he did actually go through 4 context cues for reading and writing.
I also noticed that he's inconsistent with his capitalization of his examples.
Yeah, predators should not be a capital word.
Well, it could be if he had done for existence : you can capitalize the letter after a colon.
Sure, but
if it's
he did
a
not.
Complete sentence after the colon.
I mean, to me,
he did not.
To me, the sentence just tells me that in reality, if the predators take off their masks, that they're actually more. But we've seen them with their mask off, so we have context for that. So they are not like eagles and hawks, and they do not have large claws they do have big hands to grab prey, and I don't think they actually eat the things they hunt right away. No,
not usually.
So they don't usually grab them and eat them. So if we're talking about predators from the movie, no, so that shouldn't be capitalized.
Right. All right, let's finish this. Takeaway for more engaging reading and writing. Engagement and comprehension are 2 halves of a whole, inseparable and equally vital for effective communication. Reader engagement requires close attention to figurative language, so writers are better off avoiding obscure figurative devices without assisting them in determining meaning. Text, imagery, figurative language, and context create the whole. Images and media can be an added plus. Context cues help readers, from children to seniors, unpack the complex.
Why?
When they understand how they're written, the writer is actively involving them in a story or essay. It's much easier for them to determine the entire picture. That should be a semicolon, but you were saying something?
Why did he feel the need to say readers, from children to seniors?
It's AI. It's got to be AI.
It has to be. Ernest Hemingway's tools for reader understanding and engagement are priceless. Did he have tools for that?
Well, he used the 4 tools that were just given to us.
Do we know that, or is this guy just saying that? Is this machine just saying that? They have motivated my writing to be sparkling clean and uncluttered, like a home where people feel better sitting in.
Wait, did you just finish with a prepositional phrase?
We do not end our sentences in prepositional statements. The trailer look,
it's not a hard and fast rule that you don't end a sentence with a preposition because there are verb phrases. There are verb phrases that use a preposition to make the verb mean something else, and those are valid. That's just ending a word with a verb that is 2 words.
No, but I feel like we should be ending this on a Beavis and Butthead joke.
But sitting in is not one of those examples, and so this is actually a mistake.
In whose trailer Ernest Hemingway was sitting.
Off in whose trailer they were whacking, yes. No, like... He basically yammered for 2 pages, gave us 4 short definitions with 1 example each. Most of those examples were poor, and then is like, my writing is sparkling clean and uncluttered, and I'm just baffled by this. A little terrified, honestly. He never actually talked about Ernest Hemingway's tools specifically either. He just gave 4 generic tools. This was written by AI. It must have been.
It absolutely had to be, and I think that internet theory is actually correct. This article has...
Oh my god.
This article has led me to that conclusion. It's done. It's over. I believe it. I'm
Game
on
over.
board.
Everyone's out.
I'm joining a forum
We're not real
right
beep
now. I don't know. There's... do I have... I don't think I actually know where it is. Somewhere on my computer is a story in which I did virtually nothing but make up words. I'll try to find it.
Yeah, sure.
And we'll go through why you can get away with that and how context actually works for things.
Yeah, let's do that. That sounds really good. We should do that next week, maybe.
Yeah, I mean it's really short. It would have been better to save it for Christmas since it's a Christmas story, but we're not doing it for any.
We could do that too. It's fine.
Yeah, I'll dig it up.
Dig it up and we'll figure out what to do with it. I think we're done here.
Yeah,
there's nothing else. Thank God.
Yeah, this was horrendous. Don't ever do this to me. We're going to do this again, aren't we?
I mean, I don't see why not.
It's what we do. I mean, this. Let's be honest. This is kind of our thing. We're good at this.
Well, this is such a contrast from that video that we saw, where it was like, oh, this is some pretty decent advice, and there's exceptions, but I understand that these are not super hard rules, and that there's going to be exceptions, and that you need to understand why the exceptions work. This is gibberish almost. It's very close to it.
I was going to make a joke about being pretentious, and you cut me off right when I said we're good at this, and so now we're just pretentious. Yeah, let's never look at this again. And
yeah, let's never ever look at this again.
For anyone who is listening to any of this, I hope that you have enough context to know what words we were saying that are good advice and what are not.
Yeah. And if not, go take a couple of trips to the ship-shaped car wash and clear your mind.
If not, examine yourself and determine if you may actually just be like a ThinkPad or something that's running an AI.
Indeed. All right. I think we should call it an episode.
We are done.
We are done.
No, I don't want to end.
I need to watch an episode of Nero Wolf or something to get this out of my head.
Yes, I need a palate cleanser. That's kind of where I was going with that.
Yes. But with this, he's using text and images, so you might need a palate cleanser and a palette cleanser.
His images were atrocious. Here's a car wash that looks like a boat. Thank you for teaching me about context.
Thank you for using the word programmatic architecture when novelty architecture would have meant the same thing and been better because it can be figured out through context clues.
I actually scrolled over 2 of the pictures thinking they were ads. That's how bad it was.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they're pretty ridiculous. All right. Well, we will call this.
Oh God,
this
no!
week
I found proof. I found proof that it's AI.
Oh,
because the pictures are AI too. Look at the fortune teller picture. Look at the hand.
Maybe, yeah. It could just be really badly drawn.
I mean, the palm part of it looks like an ear. It looks like...
Yes, it does. I agree. But it could just be really badly drawn.
Okay, maybe.
Because it looks like an actual photograph of like the top of a table or something, or like a banner. Like maybe.
Hey, I mean,
wouldn't it be funny if the AI wrote the article but the images were real?
It would.
I think that's the takeaway message from this.
No, here's actually the funny thing though. It's like,
okay,
I'm not quite up to date on how well the AIs are doing at this point. Someone would have had to have shown the AI the picture of that boat-shaped car wash and told it to include that in part of the story. Again, we have a clue that this might not have been an AI that did this. Yeah. And again, it just makes me think that the AI is getting way too intelligent. Like we don't actually have true AI. We just have very large databases and very good search algorithms. But maybe we do actually have an AI out there that's clever enough to say, I have to make it look like I'm not an AI, but just enough to where it can fool people. Just enough problems with the way I do things to where, no, that can't possibly be. And basically the AI is putting itself into context.
Yes.
So we're doomed.
With a Q.
Yes.
We're doomed.
Capital C context.
Capital C. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. As always, we are the Wordy Pair, and I am Rudy.
And I'm Justin.
And we will see you all next week. Have a good week.
That was horrible.
Thanks for listening to the Wordy Pair Podcast. Our passion is all things writing, world building, and getting into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We hope you enjoyed our unique takes. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to get your weekly dose of writing weirdness. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. For Rudy, it's @Rudolph_Cone. And for Justin, @Ninja Mouse Chew. See you next time on the Wordy Pair Podcast.